All right, so since the Tim Dillon breakup, Tim's been slowly trying to get his show back on track. It seemed like Ben was a bigger part of the show than people really thought. And for a while, people didn't like the direction the show was heading in after Ben left because Tim was just having guests on every week and people weren't really into that. But it looks like he finally might be back to his original style, just a solo show with him talking about whatever's going on. And that's what his last podcast was like. And I think people are happy with that. For some people, it'll never be the same without Ben, but at least he's doing well for himself. He started his own podcast called Lemon Party with his brother and another comedian, and that's doing really well. People really seem to enjoy it. I listened to a couple episodes. It is pretty good. And their Patreon's doing really well. And also Ben's working for Kyle Dunnigan, I believe, which is a pretty good gig. So I think he's doing just fine for himself without Tim. And it's pretty funny because if you remember right after their breakup, Tim talked about it briefly on his podcast with Ray Kump. And Ray's like, oh man, I'm really looking forward to the next Ben Avery project. Like goofing on him, being sarcastic. Like, what is Ben really going to do without Tim? But in less than a month, Ben has already doubled Ray's Patreon numbers, so that has not aged very well. So also during this podcast, when Tim was addressing why Ben left, if you remember, Tim made it sound like Ben left on his own, like it was all his decision. He wanted to do something better. He was sick of being a giggler and taking shit from Tim, so he decided to move on. And when Tim addressed this, I think a lot of people were skeptical. They felt like there's more to the story, and they just didn't like how Tim addressed it because he just addressed it in the way you'd expect him to, like just goofing around about it, not taking it too seriously. And people just felt like he should have had more respect for Ben. And then there are even some leaked Discord messages after this that are allegedly from Ben, where he said the story is completely different. He didn't leave because he was pursuing his own project. He didn't leave because he couldn't handle the negativity and Tim making fun of him. So I think this is when people started putting the pieces together, and it was pretty obvious what really happened, especially after Tim had my video removed where I talked about a theory that probably is accurate. It was basically Tim and Ben had an argument behind the scenes and Tim fired him. But before it became public, Tim asked him back and threw a ton of money at him. He's like, just take the money, keep working on the show, and we're good. But Ben had too much pride, and he probably wanted a legit apology or just him to admit that he's wrong or something. And that didn't happen, so he just moved on. And Tim tried to play it off like, oh, he's just sick of the show. He wanted to go do something better. He didn't want to be a giggler anymore. He outgrew his role. He was sick of taking shit from the comments and from me. He was sick of me making fun of him. And I think that was the part that really got to Ben. That's why he spoke out about this, because he didn't want people to think that he was too sensitive for the show or something. And I wish I could just play the clip where Tim's talking about why Ben left, but I'm pretty sure this video would get taken down for it. Even though the clip is still up on YouTube, you can go listen to it if you want. But the reason I'm talking about this today is because recently on Tim's subreddit, somebody posted a DM that they got from Ben where they don't really show what they said to Ben, but Ben responded to them and he said, I was fired, dude. I'm not too sensitive to bits. That has nothing to do with it. And then there's also this one where Ben said he was fired and he didn't accept an offer to come back. And also somebody sent me a DM that looked like that as well. So this seems pretty legit, and it's just pretty obvious this is what happened. Like when somebody posted this to Tim's subreddit, the first comment's basically like, no shit, of course this is what's going on. And I don't know why Tim wasn't just honest with what happened. I mean, that could have been so much easier. Like, does anybody really expect him to be the nicest guy behind the scenes? Of course he's gonna be kind of an asshole, and I'm sure he has a huge ego considering how popular he is. And I like this comment from one of my videos where I talked about this. They said it's almost like he's a dishonest Long Island realtor or something, which is pretty funny, but it probably would have been a lot easier for him if he just honest about it in the beginning. Instead, him trying to hide it made the story even bigger and upset more fans, and now basically everybody, I'm sure, is aware of the truth. And now obviously people are speculating why he fired Ben, possibly, and I'm sure it's just a combination of things. I don't think it's just one thing. But this person said, best guess is Ben was the fall guy for the special being garbage, which maybe, I don't know if we'll ever get the truth here, but I know comedians obviously take their shit really seriously, and if something doesn't go right, they're probably going to try to blame it on somebody else. And I think Ben was the director of the special, so maybe this is what happened, because I heard people were pretty disappointed with the special. But, like I said, I'm sure it's a bunch of things. I don't think it's just one thing that happened and that was it. Like maybe there's a straw that broke the camel's back, but it was probably a bunch of stuff leading up to that. But I'm sure Tim's regretting firing Ben. I mean, it sounds like he regretted firing him right when he did it, because if this is all true, he fired him and then asked him back right away. So he probably fired him and realized, like, shit, I probably do need him. The show's probably not going to be the same without him. But Ben didn't want that. He didn't want to take the deal, so he moved on. And now Tim, he's with a new producer. And a lot of people just think the show will never be the same without Ben. And, the show's getting a little better now, it sounds like. Tim's kind of turning it around. He's back to just solo shows. but it'll never hit the peak it did with Ben. I mean, I think his Patreon dropped off a lot too. So Ben was a big part of the show for a lot of people. And I've heard a lot of people say that they stopped listening to Tim's podcast and now they just listen to Ben's. And it's just hilarious because people will still comment about him on Tim's podcast, and Tim's fans will get all pissed off about it. Like his hardcore fans that still fully support him, they'll be like, move on from him. He's gone. Like, stop talking about him. Go comment this on his podcast. So it's just funny to see Tim getting trolled for once and his fans getting all worked up about being trolled. And it sounds like a lot of people still reach out to Ben telling him to come back because the show's not the same. Like, the show needs him. And that's why he like responds with this. Like, no, I was fired. I was like, oh, I'm not coming back. But who knows? Maybe someday we'll see these two crazy kids work things out and they could have some kind of reunion and get back together. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments, and check out Ben's podcast if you haven't. It's pretty good. It's a Lemon Party on YouTube. And then make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video.